Chicago Alliance, as well as from Indivisible, Lakeview, Lincoln Park, Old Town. I am thrilled to have you here tonight and to thank Congressman Quigley for making the time in his very busy schedule to talk to you all and tell us his points of view of what's going to happen in this world of craziness that we all live in. Importantly, I want to start with some good news, because we're all looking for some. Okay?
Let me hold it one more second. Sorry about that.
Can't hear me now, even with my loud voice? Okay. Hear me now?
Right here.
Okay. All right. I am happy to tell you that the Office of Management and Budget, which you may know is the keeper of the dollars, took down the appropriations database. And due to pressure from lawyers and all of you calling and writing, that database is back up. Now, why is that important? As activists, it's where we know how the money is being spent. So when they do their bullshit, we can know, in fact, that they're doing it. Now, I also want to tell you that there is a big protest on Labor Day, okay? And we're asking you all to attend. It's on Haymarket Square, and it starts at 11 and ends at 2. There will be a march. There's a sign-up on the Indivisible page in Mobilize, so please do that. I also know that you're also concerned about what are we doing, and I'm sure the Congressman will address some of this, should the Trump regime send military troops of the National Guard into Chicago. I can tell you that Indivisible is meeting with coalitions, making plans with the people that are most affected so that we can put together a view of what we might do. Now, it's important that we not just run into the street or respond to any old group that wants to tell us to do something. We will be visible, we'll be loud, and we will be nonviolent. If you haven't signed up for daily action on the Indivisible page, please do so, because that's where you're going to find the actions. Now, with that said, I not only want to thank Congressman Quigley for being here, but importantly, from a personal point of view, let you all know that our fearless leader, Paul Kendrick, is running for state legislature in the 12th representative district. Now, from a personal point of view, again, I can tell you that this person has put his heart and soul over the past 7 years to bring forth progressive events, views, and policy in his various roles in this city. So if you have it in your heart to donate or sign his ballot petition, please do, because he is the elected leader we need in that district that currently is held by Margaret Croak, who's running for comptroller. So with that said, let me turn it over to Paul for further words.
Thank you so much, Pat. And tonight is about Congressman Quigley, so I just wanted to quickly say just thank you. You all have really inspired me. It's a moment when we need fighters, people that have been organizing and doing this work. So thank you for encouraging me in this run. Really appreciate it. I remember when we had meetings where, we had a meeting once where one person showed up. Can you imagine that poor guy hearing all the things, the actions Pat and I and Kate and Janet were throwing at him? And now look at us. So just really appreciate all of you taking action, being here today. And this is going to be really fantastic to hear about what's been happening in Washington, what we can do about it. As Congressman Quigley knows, Indivisible is all about taking action when the wannabe authoritarian fascists want us to feel powerless, want us to be hopeless at home. And we know when we take action, we remember our power, and that we've done this before and we're doing it again. So Congressman Quigley, I mean, you all know him, but he's now been serving the 5th District of Illinois for 16 years. Yeah. And he previously served on the Cook County Commission for 11 years?
10 years.
10 years, okay.
True.
We want to give you a special shout out for the work you've been doing, one, to raise your voice on Ukraine and support the freedom of the Ukrainian people. Yeah, give it up for that. And your fight this past week really on getting the CDC funds released and really speaking up about these vital funds that Trump is holding up that could cost lives that Congressman Quigley is fighting on. So he's been a leader on LGBTQ issues, on transparency, on transportation, on good government, and he's the person that always shows up. You always see Congressman Quigley at any farmer's market, any community event. He really models a service of always being out in the community. So we're excited to get a briefing from him on what's been happening in Washington, what we can do about it, and then we have some questions that members have submitted in. And last, before I close, I just want to say, sorry for having to do the names. This was, because of some security issues today. We did have to check the registration. Usually we just, you come to the basement of Promiscuous and we just have a beer as friends. But we had to be a little more formal today to protect the security of a congressman. So we're really grateful, Congressman Quigley, for you to spend this time with us, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. In 1983, I started working for a Chicago alderman in Lakeview, Bernie Hansen. And the funny thing is, I was working full-time as a staffer to an alderman. Easily the most pragmatic job in the world. Potholes, abandoned cars, street lights out, zoning. Do people feel safe having their kids walk to school? I mean, this is the meat and potatoes. Today I spoke at the City Club. I said, mayors should have to sit in an alderman's office and just take the calls. Because in the end, folks, I always begin meetings talking about how important service is, and the alders do great jobs. And I'm going to credit my staff here. Erica Reardon's my district director. So when I get a call and there's some shrieking in the background because they're at O'Hara and their passport's expiring, I jump right into action and call Erica. So I just want to start with the premise. This is where we come from. Now, I was also at the University of Chicago getting a master's degree in public policy. Easily the least pragmatic place in the the most theoretical. But I gotta tell you, in today's world, that's not a bad mix, right? We need to think about what government means to people. My colleagues are crisscrossing the country on this break, talking about what Democrats need to do better, right? What's the new strategy? Where are we at? And what do people care about? Obviously, the thing they care about most is things cost too much. I think it's time and it's appropriate for us to look inward, not just nationally, but locally as well. Can we make government more efficient? Should it cost $1 billion a mile to extend the red line when it's a quarter of that in Europe? Should it take a year to get a building permit when we need a lot more housing, right? So it's not for any other purpose that people can speculate. It's because we have to get better, and Democrats have to do better and understand why they didn't win and what we have to do as we move forward. So I call it the Let Her Rip Tour. I'm having a lot of fun at City Club today with 250 of our closest friends. And we get to talk about everything. I think I called Secretary Kennedy, what was the terms I used? No, it was something else. Something like a thoughtless, careless moron. So it's that level of sophistication that's But I gotta tell you, the alderman would pick me up at 2 in the morning. We would drive around the community, and I would see a young man later that morning power washing the sidewalk here named Tom Tunney. And we talked about how we're going to grow the community, that Nettlehorse needed a new roof, Hawthorne needed new windows, and how we would solve all these problems. It was an education of a lifetime. And I just want you to remember that as we go through this, we still have to function as governments. And it is much, much, much tougher with the orange guy in the White House. So that's sort of number one is People say, what can I do? Here's the thing, you get up and go to work. There's a lot to do. And I know some people have some thoughtful ways to describe what you can do. Here's number one. And I know some of you already do this or have this, but you can always get better. Get really, really, really good at running campaigns. Be an asset that every campaign could use, right? If you have to do it here in Illinois, or you go to Iowa, where we're going to win a House seat back, Michigan, Wisconsin, whatever, right? It's tough to encourage people. If you know how to run a field campaign, you know what it's like. It's a lot like Tom Sawyer painting the fence. You have to convince people how much fun it is to paint that fence. Knocking on a door when someone's a little cranky, unwilling to talk to you, and not taking get the hell out of here for an answer, and helping them understand that. So I would say the number one thing people can do is get really, really good at that, because the primaries are coming up soon, and we've got critical elections, and it's going to be narrow again. Trump won by how much? 78,000 votes first election in 3 states. That's about the size of Soldier Field. Biden won by less than that amount. Went a little different this time, but still not dramatically big numbers. So that's number 2. A little bit by way of explaining how we need to message this. It's a big tent, folks. One person in one style is not going to work to win back the House, win back the Senate, win back the White House. So, we've got AOC and Bernie and folks in the center talking to folks in a manner in which they're accustomed to. I remember someone saying to me, I saw this guy in the city council, not in this ward, and I couldn't believe anybody would vote for him. I said, well, when he knocks on the door to get elected, the person who answers the door looks and talks and acts a lot like him. Gotta understand that. So how do we do this? My extraordinary comms director, Victoria.
Yeah.
She's, we're talking not just on traditional MSNBC, CNN, but the others, because we don't want to leave any of these fields unmanned. We got to battle them all. And the manner in which I do this, you've probably seen when I get really pissed off and show righteous indignation, and I do that because it's just blowing off steam, and I feel the need to do that. I just want you to know, a lot of times you're going to see me talking to swing voters in swing districts in swing states. And I'm not talking to the base. I love the base, but I need to talk to folks who are going to make a difference in there. So, there are others who have other assignments. But for me, this is what, during the first Trump impeachment, I'm on the Intel committee. We were the investigators. And every night, I was 2 or 3 times talking to a national audience what this meant. Because the jury, unlike what the Constitution says, was not really the Senate. It was the American people. You had to help them understand that. And that's why Trump lost when he lost. So that's what you're going to see. I'm going to continue to talk to those people about all of these things. So when you ask me, how do we deal with the National Guard issue? You can't always appeal to people's hearts. Sometimes, and it doesn't necessarily, if it doesn't affect them, they're not sure how to deal with this. The example I give is The Jungle, right? Upton Sinclair. He wrote this extraordinary book because he was worried about worker safety, right? One of the great journalist writers of all time. Teddy Roosevelt read the book and said, I've been poisoned. He said, I aimed for their heart and I hit a little lower. If I can't appeal to their heart on a lot of these issues, I try to appeal to their brains and their common sense on this stuff. Are you worried about being safe? Bringing in the National Guard is not the way to do it. In DC, they're feeding birds, they're picking up garbage on the mall. And they're not trained to do this, obviously. But if I want to appeal to someone's practical side, if you took the money they used to deploy the National Guard in LA, you could have hired a couple thousand police officers if you felt that was the only way. Again, if you're talking to someone who's really conservative, you can hire a couple thousand police officers, right? Now in Chicago, we know, hey, I said to the president, hey, I'll meet you at State and Madison if you want to help me get money for Arnie Duncan's CRED program, the nonviolence program, the interrupters who actually save lives and prevent crime. And I mean, we don't necessarily need as many police in these activities. So there's a thoughtful way to approach everyone. So I guess that other point is know your audience. We got to figure out how to appeal to people that we don't necessarily agree with. Toughest part of this, especially when it's so intense and our democracy is hanging there, is having empathy with people that absolutely are driving you nuts. You may not ever convince people on the far extreme, but you can convince enough to make a difference. So that empathy, seeing the world through someone else's eyes, is tough. And Democrats have sucked at this for a really long time. I sit through caucus meetings where we talk about this. Why aren't you basically, our strongholds, East Coast, a little bit in the Midwest, and then on the West Coast. We're missing a lot of folks. Why is that? You can't just say, well, they're all racist, right? Because there are a lot of them, but you gotta remember, why did Trump win so many precincts? That Obama won, right? That's the voters we need to get to. That's what we have to understand. You know, how did Trump win in Bridgeport? How did Trump win on the northwest side of Chicago? So we've got to think about that. So look, there's a lot to talk about. I'll touch on just a few points because I want to get to the questions that people have. But they said, what can I do? Before we get into those other things of what you can do, I'll just say every once in a while, I think you understand this, you need to disengage from this shit. You know what I mean. A wife who watches this and gets all wound up, she can't sleep, and it's just eating at her. My kids, my friends, my staff. You gotta get away from it, folks, because this is unfortunately a bit of a marathon and a sprint. There's a hell of a lot you can do, but you gotta be strong for it. And I feel the same way, but you gotta get away, watch something besides the news. I suggest Turner Classic Movies. No commercials, and they have some corny movies that keep me going. Walk your dogs, scratch your cat, something like that. I'll just touch on one of those movies. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. I get this all the time. Do you watch House of Cards? I go, I live House of Cards. Why would I want to watch more of this? Right? So yeah, I'll watch West Wing for the 60th time. And I'll watch Mr. Smith. I need me some Frank Capra. And some people say, well, which one's more realistic? And of course the answer is Veep. You need a little more of that, right? I never thought we'd go through a second term of this. And I'll be honest, when it happened, like you, I was really depressed. How are we gonna handle this? How can our fragile little experiment in democracy handle it? And I think we can. What I said at the beginning is true now. It is going to get worse before it gets better. You see that. The trend that's there's a lot of writing on this. It's a little wonky. and my staff cringes when I do this, but it's instructive to see what took place in Hungary, right? The polling before Orban took over, about a third of the public said democracy isn't always the best form of government. Real similar to the polling you see now among registered Republicans. But what you have to take from it when we talk about the autocratic trends is this, and this is what we missed. Someone can get elected democratically and then use the tools of democracy to bring it down. That's the playbook right now. So we have to help people understand why that matters. We have to convince them on an almost one-to-one basis. So communicate with Republicans, watch what they watch, read what they read. You know, it is a shame. Part of the reason we're polarized is everyone's reading what they read, and it just reinforces what they already agree with, and that's tough. When we read, I'm pointing to everybody my age, we read newspapers, we read print, and it's interesting, analysis is they all had about 20 to 30% articles that you disagreed with by columnists and authors that you disagreed with. Not the worst thing in the world to do, if only to understand the other person's point of view and how to make a better argument against it. So, food for thought. I will touch on Ukraine and then go right to the questions. I've been there 5 times since the war started. We're going to go back a 6th time just because you've got to draw attention to it. It really harkens back to FDR's last inaugural, where he said, we've learned that to have a friend, you need to be one. And what happens over there affects us over here. His shortest inaugural, but most presidential speeches, their shortest ones are their absolute best. Well, I think what happens here in a nutshell is Putin understands strength and he doesn't see it in Trump. Trump's a real tough guy when it comes to pulling a woman out of her car, breaking the windshield, scaring the hell out of the kids because she may be undocumented, but he's a wimp to Putin. And this should piss you off too. So there's a lot that needs to be done there. It's about who we are as a country in the larger picture of isolationism from an economic, cultural point of view, right? The front lines for pandemics are not here. They're in Africa, and by stripping away USAID, cutting CDC and all those things, we're less safe for all those reasons. All the other issues you can argue. Oh, and final point on leverage. Who in the hell thought our best leverage would be Epstein? Epstein, right? The disgusting pedophile monster, right? And I understand the American people want to know about this, but you know, my Republican colleagues left town early because we were putting a vote in front of them on everything that they didn't want to take, and they said, well, we're just going to go then. But if they think we're not going to use every bit of leverage to keep them from doing this stuff and destroying our democracy, they are not paying attention. So watch for that in the coming weeks, and love to see them squirm, love to make them, force them to do things they don't want to do. We've only got our voice and our vote, folks. We're ready to use that to the extent possible. But anything else that comes along like that, don't think for a second we won't do it to keep our country together. So let's take some questions.
All right. Give it up for Congress. So one question that 4 people ask, and so Rick, Frederick, I'll go to you, but also shout out to PJ Kindle, Susan Cox, and Dan Hartnett for similar questions. But Rick, if you're here, yeah, go ahead.
It's a little bit dated now, I guess, recent developments, but I wanted to know, if everyone can hear me, what you can do at the federal, state, and local level preemptively to stop this National Guard coming in. It sounds like they're coming in.
Yeah.
What can be done at those levels, and what can we as citizens do as well?
Yeah, it's frustrating. We can't sue, right? A lot of people think the Democrats in Congress can sue as a body. Only the Speaker can be the one, right? Supreme Court case on it. We can coordinate and work with ACLU and other groups that are doing amazing jobs with them. So right now, that's probably the best tool to stop this. This isn't, I mean, this is a president who's not asking permission. He's not seeking to coordinate, which is, even if you thought this unconstitutional, illegal action made sense, you'd want to coordinate with local law enforcement, but they're not. So when the press asks me, what are we learning about this? We're not learning anything. He decides to do it. I mean, this is a president with the attention span of a gnat, right? And he often does things to just move it to the next point when he doesn't like the press that he's getting. So what I'm doing is talking to, again, centrist, swing voters, swing states, swing districts, and people here who voted for Trump. This is costing you a lot of money. There's a hell of a lot better ways to do these things. It's a waste of resources. It's an absolute insult to the National Guard, puts them in a horrible position. They don't know anything at all about law enforcement. That's not their purpose. So you saw the press conference Monday, pretty impressive. Extraordinary coalition of the electeds, business, cultural, law enforcement, all saying why this is a bad idea. So we just have to hammer away and communicate to the public. It's part of a larger issue I want to touch on. These are agents of chaos for a reason, right? They don't like the news cycle, they throw something else, 10, 12, 20 things at a time. So I asked one of our best messengers in the universe, how do you deal with that? And it sounds odd, but he gave me the example of Mickey Mantle, famous New York Yankee slugger, who appeared at a game intoxicated, not hungover, but drunk. Manager didn't put him in the game, but in the ninth inning, put him in the pinch hit, and he hit a 480-foot home run. He gets back to the dugout, and his teammates said, "How the hell did you do that?" He said, "I hit the one in the middle." It's kind of what we have to do, right? You're gonna have to gotta group these issues, like the National Guard issue and others, into common themes of what this president is doing, especially that appeal to that person's interest, even if it's just the self-interest or pocketbook interest, like we do with the big bad bill, convincing people in rural areas. It's your hospitals that are gonna close. It's your folks that are gonna have to go 100, 200 miles to an ER. This is on you. So grouping them in a way so that the middle is how this affects them is tough, but it is one of our challenges. And I think this affords us an opportunity to help them just along those lines. Because obviously, you have to explain it's tough. This one is, hey, it seems like we would be safer. And we've had some goofs here locally who disappointed us and said, bring them on, the more the merrier, not understanding all the circumstances. So it's frustrating, but it affords us an opportunity to message folks that Democrats want our streets to be safe, but we have a much more effective way to do that. We're starting to see positive trends in Chicago toward that end.
Amen. Mary Driscoll has a healthcare question on behalf of the Indivisible Healthcare Committee.
I'm gonna read it. Okay. So, recent polling have shown us that most Americans are kind of fed up with our healthcare system. Americans that are Democrats and Republicans. And our healthcare system is in need of reform. We're held hostage to corporate greed, to the influence of big pharma, the influence of unregulated insurance, lobbies, et cetera, et cetera. So this is like a forward-looking question. What do you think that you can do to stand up to these lobbies and their influence and bring healthcare back where it belongs, to being a human right that all Americans should have?
Sure. Absolutely.
You can clap for that.
And what we saw with Obamacare was an interesting movement toward this, right? There were people disappointed that it wasn't universal care, and I understand that. But we got to appreciate that before Obamacare passed, women could be charged more for health care. There were not a whole slew of health care given to seniors wasn't there. You could have lifetime caps, pre-existing conditions weren't covered. So it moved us down the football field 40 yards with a long way to still go, but it was progress. And when it was introduced, and the Republicans were still trying to repeal it, President Obama said, in 10 years you're gonna like this, but I'm pretty sure you won't call it Obamacare. It's those little victories that made a big difference. And then under President Biden, and we're starting to do that, the ability to deal with prescription drugs, right? Where you're starting to see some of the price downs because they could negotiate the price of prescription drugs. It was another step forward. But I'm just telling you the truth. It's really tough if you don't have control of the House, the Senate, and the White House. It was just to show you how extraordinary it was when we passed Obamacare. The president was advised, if you do this first, you'll lose the House. And we did, right? This thing that was just extraordinary game changer. And so you get to your point of how to address this. Hell, when it passed, and I voted for it, I had to do a truth tour because so many of our seniors who were watching Fox said, oh, they're going to take away this, they're going to take away your Medicare because of this, they're going to take, it's just, I think part of it's the big power these folks have, which we can work against, but it's also trying to get past the toxic messaging that takes place from the far right on this. It was called socialism and fascism at the same time. So I do think there was progress made under President Biden, and more would have gone place. But just to tell you the truth, I don't think it happens unless we get both control of both houses and the White House. Yep. I don't think that those industries had as much influence then as you might have thought. This was going to happen. The pushback was how far it was going to be because of the DR differences. It was really tough in the Senate. We had to do one of those deemed pass, right? Something Republicans just did. It was really tough. So look, I think just doing the right thing makes it harder for Big Pharma, doing what Biden did and addressing this and helping the public understand. Just similar to what happened with the big, bad, ugly bill, right? And helping people understand how this is going to affect Medicaid. I'm more worried about the future because big, bad bill is going to cause another $3 to $5 trillion in debt over the next 10 years. That's going to trigger automatic cuts in some of these other programs like Medicare, Social Security, and so forth. And it's going to put us in a horrible position that we'll be unable to do many of those programs. So bottom line, right now we're at greater risk of losing ground in a dramatic fashion than we are for progressing. When we get there, we'll move along, and maybe we want to turn the lights on there.
It's dark back there.
We asked Mr. Tony if he paid his electrical bill. By the way, thanks, Tom, for letting us be here.
Yeah.
You know what we're
Shout
doing?
out to Ann Sadler.
We're rolling you into an early food coma, giving you cinnamon rolls.
I love it. I love it. Chris Abbott had a question about how we. Oh, not his hair. Yeah, thank you.
You didn't see me? Congressman, as a Ukrainian-born American, I appreciate your moral leadership on Ukraine. And I I know it wasn't popular, it's still not popular in every room, but it was a moral choice to
Yeah.
defend civilians, right? And
I'll repeat the question, so
where I can have a microphone. Do you trust me?
it's up to him.
All right, let's
Yeah.
brief question.
Well, I'm only half Ukrainian, so you shouldn't be scared of me. The biggest challenge that I see, especially coming out of DNC this week, like a lot of people, especially younger people, no offense to anyone in this room, myself included, people under 40 are very focused on the issue of Gaza. It's a huge moral issue of our time. My best friend's apartment was bombed in Kiev today. She's fine. But I can't imagine what people are going through, just, without water, without food, it's horrific. And the question, the moral question going into this next election, especially coming out of DNC, was this sort of wishy-washy lack of clarity. How are we going to get to the next election when a lot of people sat the last one out precisely because they didn't see the difference on this issue? On Ukraine, there was a clear difference between Republicans and Democrats. On Gaza, there wasn't. So if we don't change course, if we don't take moral leadership, and if we'll continue to kind of try to play to all sides, chances are we're going to lose elections again, and whatever is left of our democracy at that point will be in peril. So my question to you is, will you join Dalia Ramirez's Block the Bombs bill? What is your vision on this issue? How are you going to...
I'm sure you might have noticed I called for the establishment of a Palestinian state. In that statement, we said that the U.S.
Congressman, but then
You
you went
has
and said
to-
you would always
Finish the
support Israel. You said you would always
All
vote
right.
to support Israel.
That's true, but let me answer the question. I will always vote to support Israel because they're a friend and an ally. Now,
No,
I would,
it's not true.
I would say that I disagree with Israel as much as I disagree with our current president. So you can love your country and disagree with where it's going and its leadership. That's the differentiation. So, when I called for the establishment of a Palestinian state, that obviously angered a lot of people. But let's understand what that means. It means, and in that statement it said the U.S. should enforce the existing international laws, one of which is that we don't provide offensive weapons to countries that are blocking humanitarian aid. So, with all due respect, with all due respect, read the statement. I have called for establishment of a Palestinian state and for the U.S. to enforce its existing laws which say that you can't give offensive weapons to countries blocking humanitarian aid. So, what's next? What's next is, well, and by the way, none of these bills will ever pass in this Congress. So what we're talking about now is moving forward with appropriation matters that would have addressed offensive weapons. So I mean, people can advocate, but then there's governing. So you want someone who's going to govern and try to get this done. It's working with the leadership on the committees like House Armed Services and Appropriations, military defense appropriations, to delineate from the experts exactly which weapons we're talking about. And it's not just having a resolution or a letter or a bill introduced, which has how many co-sponsors right now? 39. Look, I get the passion for this. I've been to Israel. I've walked through the streets of Gaza. I get this. But do you want someone who's just going to advocate a general sense, or do you want someone that's going to get something done? I would tell you that the fact that I'm the one, as a centrist, who traveled to Israel when I first got in Congress with AIPAC that I'm the one calling for a Palestinian state is a big difference, right? When they see someone viewed as a centrist doing this, it's an attempt to actually accomplish something, right? That's how this is going to change in this Congress. And if you think it was easy politically, I mean, it's the right thing to do, so I'll do it. So if you think it's the right, easy thing to do, you're sadly mistaken. But if you want someone who's actually going to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish, I'm going to be in Israel again within the next month or so. And we're going to be advocating for just that. We also talked about sanctions for the West Bank provocateurs and those committing violence there. Something that Biden did, but something that we could actually really accomplish even under the worst of circumstances. So there's no issue that I've been through for 16 years here in Congress now with this much passion, this much intensity, right? There's some lines that we have to be concerned about, though. You may notice we have security for the first time. 9,000 threats on members of Congress in the last year. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to exercise your First Amendment rights, but we got to take a beat and understand and respect each other. And when we disagree, it's okay. But we have to be of a mind that there's a democratic way to do all those things in a way that does this in an appropriate fashion. So we're getting there. This is, again, a practical, honest way to get it done. You may disagree, but I've been there 16 years. If someone who can get legislation passed will move forward with these measures, it will get done. And it's not just advocating, it's governing under tough times. Same way I did when we talked about Ukraine. I was the only Democrat in Congress to vote against spending bills because there wasn't money for Ukrainian support. So it's not a question of whether or not there's intestinal fortitude to do this. The heart and soul of all this is actually getting this stuff done.
Kitty Moynihan had a question on the gerrymandering and census. Kitty?
Yeah.
Thank you. All right.
I don't know if you can hear me or not, but
Yeah.
is there a coalition of Democratic leaders who are getting together to strategize about how we counter gerrymandering and Democratic leaders strategizing for a Democratic project of 2028? I just feel like Democrats are behind the curve.
Yeah.
Well, Democrats were behind the curve a long time ago in how the maps got so bad. I served, I think, 4 terms in Congress in the minority when more Americans voted for a Democrat for Congress than a Republican, right? In an ideal world, independent commissions draw maps, something akin to what the Founding Fathers had in mind, right? There is legislation in Congress to do just that, and I'm a co-sponsor of it. But obviously, it's not going to pass in this term. It will pass in the next term. And you saw some of this in the election legislation that we passed. It wouldn't pass in the Senate, but we've passed some of these before. What I was referring to in terms of Democrats being behind, nationally, we didn't spend enough time working on general assemblies. We lost general assemblies. We had control of the House, the Senate, and the White House, but we didn't have control of the general assemblies. Who draws the maps? The general assemblies, and they draw them the way they are. So look, you just gotta think short term here. You gotta think pragmatically as you possibly can. And that is, you gotta fight fire with fire. You know, you can't have some sort of unilateral surrender and say that's the bad thing. Bottom line is, let's just say in Illinois, we're gonna draw different maps. I mean, maybe you win one more seat, maybe. It's gonna take California. It's gonna take out east a couple different states. And so those things are possible, but it's going to be tough. This is the tough, slug it out trench warfare that we're done, that drags us all down to the bottom. And it's unfortunate, but until we get there and control this and can stop the bleeding, we're gonna have to just meet the fire with fire. And that's redrawing the maps in every state where we can get more. I mean, I've seen one map even that it's called the Amtrak map. I think I would represent Lakeview and like near East St. Louis. So I know governors that are talking about making maps that are not contiguous. So when I want to make you feel better. During the first Trump administration, I felt like I was doing group therapy. And my friends who actually do group therapy say, Mike, they need to feel better at the end of the session. This is a call to action. It can get a lot worse, right? This is real, right? I was in the room on January 6th. If it wasn't for Capitol Police, I wouldn't be here, and I'm not sure our democracy would be. So, this is the call to action. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This is a president who will do more and more dramatic things. So we have our voice, we have our vote, we have our constituents, and that's what we're going to focus on. Stopping them any way we can. Long-term plans, short-term plans, I get it. But right now there's an immediacy, there's a contact sport going on right now, and that's where we have to win.
Two more questions? Two more. Okay. Pat had a question about the census.
Yeah, Mike, one of the key things that
Yeah.
we are worried about, even though we know what's in the Constitution, is the orange man in the White House seems to think he can change the census, which goes to some degree to the question on districts, as well as just overall representation if he decides to kick out people who he decides are not citizens. Is there anything that Congress can do to preempt him in that arena?
Let's just remember what I said before, and I wish there was a better answer. We can be involved, amicus briefs in the lawsuits. The good news is he tried this in his first term and he lost in court. So I think that's where the battle's going to be. When I said there's whatever leverage we have, we're going to use, and there's probably 20 other things just like this. That's just what we're going to have to do. If it's Epstein, great. If it's anything else, we will use it to the extent possible. If the Republicans are unified, they're going to pass what they want to pass. The best way I can do is make it as tough for them as possible by talking to their constituents. Some of my colleagues are doing town halls in Republican districts. My message is I'm going to go on their TV and try to talk to as many of the semi-sane folks as I possibly can to convince them of why this matters and why they should push back. So that's still the best avenue.
All right, so for our last question, Dallas, Knapp. All right, Dallas. On the Constitution.
Hi, Mike.
Hi.
Thanks for coming out.
Sure.
Dallas, I've lived in Lakeview since 2019. My question for you is the Constitution still in effect? Articles 1, 2,
Yeah.
and 3 just don't exist. They
Yeah.
don't apply. And the Bill of Rights is completely eviscerated. So
Well, look,
what are you going to do about that?
yeah, look, it's a constitutional crisis. Hey, I serve on the Appropriations Committee. The chairman of the committee, right? Remember Article 1, revenue bills start in the House. The Congress controls revenue. The chairman of the committee, a decent guy, Chairman Cole, said publicly, our appropriation bills are optional. So yeah, there's whole sections of the Constitution which are not currently in play. So I can make it as tough as possible. And let me just give you an example on that. So when we go back, what would you do if you were me when we're trying to pass spending bills, budgets, right? The way they're actually passed, we pass appropriation sub-bills. As you know, some of my friends in the Senate on the Democratic side voted for their bills, right? Because they had faith, right? I have faith. I'm a Cub fan. But I'm not naive. So here's the math. It takes 60 votes to pass a spending bill in the Senate. It takes 50 votes to claw it all back. So fool me once, right? Why would I trust them at all, right? When we go back, I can't tell you that we're not heading for a government shutdown.
Shut it down. Shut it down.
It's frustrating, and I think the reason my friends in the Senate voted to not shut it down is that they thought, I think they honestly thought they can trust these folks. So, I don't think we can, and when people say, what's it like in Congress now? Northeast, Southwest, home is best, but that's what we're going back to. So all we can do is voice what's happening, try to educate people in America, make it as tough as possible, if not impossible, for them to do horrible things, and help you understand as those things happen. But I do have hope, right? I mean, this is as bad a situation as you will face in your lifetime. This is the ball game. So what you're doing tonight, what you're doing on an everyday basis to help other people, it does matter, right? It's helpful to know that there's other people out there who care about the world and each other. That stuff still matters. What I said at the beginning really matters. Get really good at campaign stuff. It's a whole slew of it. You can go online and the DNC, D-Trip, have whole reams of programs on how you can get better at this and how you can be involved and how you can use social media, right? It's all the things that we're going to do. I'm running for the DNC because I want to engage on a national level and talk about what Democrats need to do better. So I was frustrated we had a wishy-washy bill. We won't have a wishy-washy bill, a resolution coming out of it. It's frustrating. The line, I don't belong to an organized political party, I'm a Democrat, does come to mind. But let me say one more thing about the party. You don't build it, you don't make it stronger by cutting loose your friends. So the trans community needs to know they're my friend, and we're not going to desert them because somebody thinks it'll be politically expedient. We're not the ones focused on such things. It's these strange Republican folks who are so fascinated with the trans community, right, that they go to these extraordinary extremes. To give you a little glimmer, we won this when we repealed Don't Ask, Don't Tell, because, well, if members of the trans community are willing to fight and offer their last full measure of devotion for you, and you don't want to give them the same rights as somebody else, the guy in orange who said, my shin splints bother me, I'm not going to go into the draft, screw that. So it doesn't help to cut loose your friends. You've got to remind ourselves there's more that unites us than divides us. It's not easy. I don't have these absolute answers that are going to all walk out of here and say everything's going to be great. No, it's going to get worse. And we're going to have to stick together and understand that and be united and be ready when those moments come when we can change things at the local and national level politically. So I'm ready to go. I appreciate differences of opinion. We're going to go forward and save this country together. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Congressman Quigley, for being here, willing to engage, talk, dialogue. This is really substantive and incredible. Thank you so much. I want to thank Ann Sather and Alderman Tom Tunney for allowing us to be here, having the cinnamon rolls, the coffee. Let's make sure we put things away. Remember, Labor Day, Haymarket Memorial, 11 a.m. Are we going to stand up, Chicago? For Chicago, for working people? That's what we do here. Thank you to the steering committee members who put tonight on, Pat, Kate, Janet, Ben, and Eli. Thank you to Congressman Quigley's team, Erica and Isabella, for all your work. Thank you all again. Thank you for being part of our chapter. We'll have another meeting soon, a more social one, where you can talk more. But again, you all's questions, your engagement, so important. So we're going to keep organizing, fighting together. Thank you all.